Hello everyone, please let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you're here and let me know if I am streaming because I have no idea. Okay, I'm not receiving any feedback so far, so I'm waiting a little bit to see if any of you can give me a sign that you can hear me. Okay, I made some modifications. Can you guys? There you are. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Yes, I messed up a little bit. All right. So glad that you're here. Apologize for the confusion. And well, now we can start. Well, before we start, I want to hear from you guys. How are you doing with your Elliott wave learning? How are you finding it? Is it as hard as you thought? Is it as easy as you thought? Yes and yes. Yes, well, I hope that now we can apply it today. We have been discussing the wave principle already for 2 days, and I think it's about time you learn some practical trading application today. What do you think? Maybe we can have a setup that you can apply right away in any market. Oh, thank you so much for that, Angela. It says you have simplified so much. That is wonderful. I'm really happy to hear that. Always wonderful when you teach. Oh, so nice to hear that, Miral. Thank you so much. Just waiting for putting into action. Yes, we will put that into action. No, it is not easy. Well, it is not easy, but it's very simple. You might be right with that, but it's extremely simple. So what we're going to do today, before we start talking about setups and things like that, because as I told you before, the most important thing that we can apply for a strategy is first forecast, then timing, and thereafter trading methodology, or let's put it this way, managing of the trade. But with what you've learned so far, there are some ways that you can already apply it in very simple manner, and we'll explore that today. Now, before we go into that, let's talk about the different patterns and their formulas. So it's going to be kind of difficult today because we're going to expand upon everything you know. So far, you learned the 5 waves in one direction, 3 waves in the opposite direction. You learned the 8-wave cycle. You learned about motive waves and corrective waves. You learn about how motive waves subdivide. Remember, we learned that yesterday. Motive waves subdivide into impulses and diagonals, and correctives subdivided into 3, which are triangles, flats, and zigzags. So what we're going to do today is to, introduce you to all of them. So first, let's start with the motives. The first one, of course, is the one that you have been familiar with, which is the 5-way move that we call impulse, and that has 3 rules that are impossible to violate, and without those rules, without following those laws, the count should be completely invalidated. This is the impulse. Then comes the diagonal. Remember that the impulses and diagonals both are motive waves, meaning that both have 5 legs, and it means that both move in the direction of the trend. But with impulses, we said that each actionary wave has to subdivide into 5. Well, with diagonals, that is not the case. So diagonals tend to subdivide into 3. And that makes it a little bit confusing, because you say, well, you have told me before that only correctives subdivide into 3. But there is something peculiar about diagonals. And it's that even though they subdivide into 3, they make progress towards the direction of the trend. So they look something like this. Okay, and typically we would label them as wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And each one of them, you can see, is subdivided into 3. In other words, instead of having 5 waves up, 3 waves down, 5 waves up, 3 waves down, 5 waves up, basically with the formula 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, now we have a formula which is 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And normally when we have a diagonal, we connect the diagonals with wave 1, 2, 3, and wave 2 and 4. So that gives it a particular shape, like a wedge. And so many of you are familiar with wedges, and I'm sure that most of you know that those traditional wedges occur at the end of a trend. So indeed, diagonals are typically appearing at the end of the trend. And when that happens, we call them ending diagonals. So can a diagonal be part of an impulse? And the answer is yes, as long as it is at the end, in the case of an ending diagonal. So an impulse would look something like this now. Let me erase this. Oops. Well, let's erase the whole thing. An impulse can look like this. Wave 1 subdividing into 5, wave 2 subdividing into 3, wave 3 subdividing into 5, of course, wave 4 subdividing into 3 because it's a correction, and then wave 5 subdividing in 5 times 3 and producing that wedge shape. Okay, so we will connect the 1 and the 3 and the 2 and the 4, as I told you before. And what we have here, sorry, this doesn't go from here, but from here. What we have here is an impulse that contains a diagonal within. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and an ending diagonal. And since we have the subdivisions there, let's label the subdivisions with the internals as instead primary, they would be intermediate, right? So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So obviously the same degree of intermediate 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 applies to here 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and applies to here 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't think we have to label it because I think by now you can see my point. Let's see if I was checking if I am missing some comments, because when I start drawing then I actually forget to look at the commentaries. All right, so now you see on this drawing we have two things. We have an impulse and a diagonal in one, right? So here we have, of course, the typical 8-wave cycle, right? That reproduces itself, and in this case it reproduces itself only once, and the third time it couldn't develop into 5. You see, each wave could not develop into 5. It was struggling, yet it kept moving towards a trend. In other words, it kept making progress. Therefore, we need to consider it as a motive wave. So now each one of these legs of the diagonal, which is obviously not in 5, because they are in 3, we need to label them as with letters, as if it were a correction. And so let's take out each one of these legs, or actually one of them will suffice. So let's take either this one or this one, it doesn't matter. So let's say that we see what we see there is something like this, right? And this is a corrective pattern. And the type of corrective pattern that we see here is an A, B, C for a zigzag. So this is exactly what we call a zigzag. Now, zigzags are, as you know, one of the 3 different corrective structures that we discussed yesterday. But they are not the only ones. We also have flat and triangles. So the difference between a zigzag and a flat is basically that wave B, let's label this as an A, this would be a B, and this would be a C, right? The difference would be that wave B would go all the way up to the origin of wave A and then come down. So you can see that it has 3 legs, exactly as this one, and they are all called the same way, A, B, and C. But when you see them, when you see the shape of it, there is a difference. This one ends pretty much in the middle of wave A, whereas this one ends pretty much at the origin of wave A. Now, when we see them internally, they're different because each structure has its own formula. Okay, so for instance, exactly as the internals of an impulse have its formula, we say it is a 5, a 3, a 5, a 3, and now with the diagonal we have a 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Well, exactly the same way, each leg of a zigzag has a formula. Okay, so let's go into each one of them. So first, let me erase all these, otherwise we don't have enough space. All right, so let's think that we have a diagonal either down or a diagonal up. So in both cases, we label them as A, B, and C. And in this case, it would be backwards, right? A, B, and C. Now, each leg of this structure subdivides as an impulse. In other words, it has 5 legs. So wave A of a zigzag has 5 legs, and wave C of a zigzag also has 5 legs. So you notice that this is, let's say, defining the trend as down, the first leg. It has lows, highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. And so now wave B would be a correction to this. So wave B will have to develop in 3 waves. And so now we have 5 and 3. Once again, we get that 8-wave cycle that we have been discussing over and over again. And thereafter, because we discussed this already, we said that after every time that we get an 8-wave cycle, every single time we get an 8-wave cycle, we see the trend going in the direction of the first 5 waves. In this case, the first 5 waves are down, and then the 3 waves are up. That means that the trend, the next direction of the trend will be down, even if temporary, as in this case of a zigzag, because, well, being the case that the zigzag is a correction, if it is pointing down, it means that, well, the next move will be to the upside, right? Because that means that, let's say, if we had a zigzag here, it's down, but the impulse is up. So whenever we have a zigzag down, we can conclude that the trend is up. But the local trend, the temporary trend, the one that is defined by this 8-wave cycle here between A and B, is down. So now, for instance, yesterday we discussed something like, can we trade against the trend? And I said, no, we have to trade always in the direction of the trend, because the trend is that part of the move that persists in one specific direction. So in this case, the trend is moving down, and it will persist moving down. Therefore, we would be able to trade wave C, but only after the 8-wave cycle has been formed. In other words, we would not trade wave A, because at that time, all the information that we have about the trend is that it's going up. Therefore, wave A would be completely against the main trend. But wave C would be with the local trend, in this case, the one that was defined by the 8-wave cycle between A and B. And so if we see it from the bearish perspective, if the correction in 3 is up, that means that the trend is down, correct? And so basically, we have here a 5-wave development for wave A, a 3-wave development for wave B, and a 5-wave development for wave C. That means that the formula for a zigzag is that of 5, 3, 5. Whereas the formula for an impulse was 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, obviously because an impulse has 5 legs. So, unfortunately, yes, you do have to learn the formula of these different corrections, but it's not that difficult, and I will show you why. In the case of a zigzag, it is obvious that the move has sufficient power as to develop in 5. right? And because of that, the correction doesn't have sufficient power as to go all the way to the origin of A. But in the case of a flat, the move down for wave A would not have sufficient power to develop into 5. Therefore, wave B would be capable of going all the way to the origin of A and sometimes even above it. Wave C, however, would always develop in 5 legs. That means that the formula of a flat would be 3, 3, 5. So here we have a zigzag, and an impulse, or a zigzag, and a motive wave, because it is possible that wave C's of both zigzags and flats develop also as a diagonal, which you are already familiar with. So now we have zigzags, let's call them like this. They equal 5, 3, 5. That would be the formula. And flats have the formula as 3, 3, and 5. And the thing to remember here is, why is wave B capable of moving all the way to the origin of A? Again, because wave A was not strong enough, did not have enough power as to develop into 5 legs, therefore defining the trend as down. And wave B then is capable of moving to the origin of A. The reason is because wave B is having still the momentum, the inertia of the main trend, which in this case would be up. And so wave B would be capable of overpowering the actions of these bears here and going all the way there. Now, there are two things that are interesting here. One of them is that, well, both of them are labeled A, B, C. In this case, this would be the A, this would be the B, and this would be the C. But if you see carefully, in order to remember these formulas, which, by the way, in my case, when I started learning this, I thought that, I had to become a physicist or something, and it was really scary. But when I see it the way that it is, with the simplicity that it has, you can see that it's very easy to remember. For instance, both of them, both the zigzag and the flat, have something in common. Wave C, in both cases, is a 5. And this is really key. Why is it really key? Because that means that waves C's are always an impulse or a diagonal. In other words, wave C's are always a motive wave that develops into 5. And with that in mind, it's extremely easy to remember that the last one is 5. And with the explanation why wave B is able to go all the way to the origin of A, it's easy to remember that the formula of a flat is 3, 3, 5. Whereas the formula of a zigzag is 5, 3, 5. And that explains why the wave B cannot have the power to go all the way to the origin of wave A. So now we have already 2 major corrections there. So now let's discuss the last one. The last one would be the triangle. Now the triangle is very easy. It's very simple. And the reason is because, well, it looks like a triangle. The triangle, even though it is a correction, it develops with 5 legs. Now, these 5 legs each has 3 subdivisions, exactly as the diagonal. So that makes it kind of confusing, right? So here we have 5 legs for the triangle, and each one of them has 3 legs. But you will notice something very peculiar. The direction of the triangle is sideways. The triangle does not make progress in the direction of the trend. And so because of that, the triangle is considered a corrective structure. And because it is considered a corrective structure, we labeled it with letters A, B, C, D, and E. And we combine or connect wave A with wave C and wave B with wave D. So the thing to remember here is that wave C is in 3, whereas in all the other correction is in 5. So only in a triangle, the wave C is a 3 wave, because all the legs of a triangle are 3 legs. So that's kind of easy to remember as well. So if you were to ask me, well, what's the difference between the diagonal and the triangle? But the answer is that if you only see the shape, there is no difference. If we were to take I don't know if I can do it, see? Maybe not. If we were to take no, we cannot. If we were to take all the legs of the triangle and turn it a little bit, putting this higher, in other words, that it's slang a little bit to the upside or to the downside, then we would have a diagonal, because they look exactly the same. Let me draw a diagonal right here so you can see what I mean. So there is a triangle, right? So now let's see the difference with the diagonal. Well, I'm going to make the same direction for wave A. So wave A would be like this, wave B would be like this, but wave C would go below the origin of wave A, and wave E, in this case, would go below the wave C. But it is a diagonal, therefore it is a motive wave. And that means that we're not going to call them with letters. So I'm just calling them with letter, so you can see the similarities with the triangle. But in this case, instead of A, B, C, D, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now notice that if we were to put this to the side, it would be the same. Okay? So the difference, a diagonal is a motive wave. It moves in the direction of the trend. It makes progress in the direction of the trend. The triangle is a corrective wave. It moves against the trend or absolutely sideways. Therefore, it is a corrective structure, but the internals of them all, both, let's say, are the same. 3 legs to the downside, 3 legs to the upside, 3 legs to the downside, 3 legs to the upside, exactly as the case of a diagonal. The difference, we label the diagonal with numbers, we label the triangle with letters. One is corrective, the other is motive. Now, triangles, well, they tend to appear where are the corrective structures? Well, typically in wave 2 or wave 4, right? So let's say, let me erase all this and we will make another drawing. Let's say that we have an impulse. Again, we have our 5 waves up for wave 1, 3 waves down for wave 2, 5 waves up for wave 3, and then now for wave 4 we could have a triangle, right? And it's connected like this, and so this would be wave 4, and then from here we would have our wave 5. See, we have 1, 2, 3, triangle 4 and 5. Now, from now on, every time that we label a correction, we want to identify what type of a correction is it. Well, it can be only 3 types, either a zigzag, a triangle, or a flat. So in this case, what type of correction is this? Well, we can see it already. We had that shape before, and that was called a zigzag. And what type of a correction is this for wave 4? Well, that's a triangle, right? So now we can go to a real chart. Let me erase this again. Let's go to a real chart like this one. Let's see. Yeah, right there we can easily see the wave 2. What shape is that? Well, that's the shape of a zigzag. And in this case, wave 4 also took the shape of a zigzag. Look, it goes down, up, not all the way to the origin of A, but pretty much the middle, and then down. So if you take this out of the price, it's a zigzag. Yeah, we can see some other structures and some other corrective structure, and we'll see that if they are zigzags or flats or what. But for instance, in this case, again, let's make the drawing. We have down, up, down, and if we take that out of the price, what do we get? We get the shape of a zigzag. And if we go into this one, notice that this is a B, right? It goes up, down, up. There we have, again, a zigzag. So from now on, when we label a correction, we want to know what type of a correction it is. Is it a flat? Is it a zigzag? Is it a triangle? Now, there are variations to all these corrective structures. I don't mean you to learn them right now, but I want to introduce them to you. I want to present to you those variations. So let's begin with the flat. Sometimes, as I said, the flat goes down all the way to the origin of wave A and down again. But sometimes the wave B goes beyond the origin of wave A and then down. So it's the same sort of inverted N, but in this case wave B went above the origin of wave A. In this case, wave B went to the origin of wave A. But they are both flats. This one is just a variation. Okay, so we don't want to be too confused with the variations of these corrective structures, because there are several, and we don't want to, be all confused with all the names and so forth, at least today. But basically, this one is called a flat, just a flat. And because this one extended a little bit above, it's called an expanded flat. But, who cares? It's the same family, same thing, right? And the very, very same thing applies to a triangle. So we got, in a triangle, we got wave A, then we got wave B, C, D, and E, right? Let's label it because it will be easier for you to see it. A, B, C, D, and E. And remember, I mentioned that we connect wave A and C, and we connect wave B and D, And that produces that contracting shape, right? That contracted shape that gives a name to the triangle, which is called a contracting triangle. Now, exactly as in the case of a flat, where wave B traveled beyond the origin of wave A triangle could do the same, and wave B traveled beyond the origin of wave A, but the rest stays the same. So we have here, again, let's label it so you can see it clearly, because with this drawing is not clearly seeable. And remember, we have to connect wave A and C and wave B and D. And when we connect those, then it looks again like a triangle. But in this case, wave B travel beyond the origin of wave A. In this case, wave B travel below the origin of wave A. But both are triangles, and both, let's say, show themselves exactly in the same positions. So there is nothing really different from both of them, only that wave B travel beyond, but the function is the same, the position is the same, let's say the consequences of it are the same. In other words, typically, triangles, as I said, appear in wave 4, never in wave 2 alone, never in wave 2, but in wave 4 typically. So the consequences of it is that when it ended, then the last move of the structure is produced. And it doesn't matter if it is a contracting triangle or a running triangle. This is called running triangle. Don't worry about the name too much. But the consequences are exactly the same. Okay, so now that we have covered some of the variations of the corrective structures, you are more prepared to see a chart and be able to identify in the corrections, in the wave 2 and wave 4, what type of a correction that is. Now, there is something really fascinating about the zigzags. And it is that when we have zigzags, we typically can expect something very peculiar with zigzags. And that is that when you connect the origin of wave A with the end of wave B, and then you draw a parallel line that contains the end of wave A, let's label them so you have a visual. So how did we do this? Well, we took the origin of wave A, we draw a line that included wave B, and then we drew a parallel line that included the end of wave A, and that typically would contain the zigzag and make or mark the end of wave C. Sometimes right at the extreme of the, I cannot move it, right at the extreme of the channel. Okay? So this is called a corrective channel. And it is this corrective channel which tells us or set the stage for that trading application that we discussed in the beginning. So let's try to do it right here on this chart directly, and let's see if this is possible. How are we going to do this? Well, remember how I said? Well, maybe we can do this. No, let's do it here. Remember how we said that we connect the origin of wave A with wave B, and then we draw a parallel line that includes the end of wave A, and that pretty much marks the end of wave C, and the zigzag will be contained within those parallel lines. Well, that's the beginning of the setup. whenever we spot this, we can draw that corrective channel. And if, and only if, the stochastic indicator gives you a buy signal in this case, we can then take it as a signal. So in this case, we don't have one. And in wave 4, we don't have it either. Okay, in this time frame, let's check it on a weekly time frame, and let's see if on the weekly time frame the signal is produced. Well, here we have a buy signal from the stochastic, but is above the 20 reference line, so we don't have confidence with this one. Okay, so instead we cannot take it because we want to see that the stochastic is oversold, that is below the 20 reference line, and then crosses, and ideally crosses above the 20 reference line, and that would be a signal. So that could occur precisely here on this. Let's see if that happened here. If we connect, oops, no, sorry. If we connect the channel, I don't think it's going to happen. No, in this case, we won't have it either. So you can see in this case, we have the signal, but it's not really there. So we cannot take it. All right, well, that's no problem. We don't always have the signal, you know. But let's look at the different market and see if we can find it. Remember how yesterday we ended up labeling what was it? The dollar. Okay, let's go to that, to those labels that we did. There we are. So let's begin with this one. Okay, let's begin with identifying wave 2. Does it look like a zigzag? Does it look like a triangle? Or does it look like a flat? So again, let's put them here very small so you remember. Zigzag, flat, and triangles. So this move, you guys tell me, does it look like this one, or like this one? Who could tell me? What kind of structure do we have in front of us? Looking for your feedback. And I'm not getting any feedback. I'm wondering if you are all there. A flat, asked Angela, and exactly a flat. Look at this. If we were to draw the lines there, look. It goes all the way to the origin of wave A and then C. Well, now we take it out, and what do we get? That, a flat, an inverted N. So there we have a situation where we could identify clearly the correction. Let's see if we have a clean correction here for wave 4. Well, yes, let's see, what does it look like? We have down, up, down. So I'm going to take it out of the price so you can see the drawing better and tell me, what does it look like? Does it look like a zigzag, like a flat, or like a triangle? Rick said a triangle for the previous one, but Rick, for a triangle, it needs to have at least 5 legs. This one has 3. So for a triangle, you would have to say this, and this. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In other words, A, B, C, D, E. But that's not the case. We have only 3 legs. So what is the correction, or what are the corrections that have 3 legs? Well, the flat and the zigzag and the flat. So it has to be either a zigzag or a flat. And Angela says a flat also, and I totally agree with you. Again, this goes all the way to the origin of wave A and falls exactly as in the drawing, an inverted N. Okay, so now we can erase this and let's see if we could draw that channel. Maybe we can. And connect this leg with this leg. And there. Now we need to add the stochastic. By the way, guys, when I use the stochastic, I change a little bit the settings, okay? It's nothing magical, but I'm going to give you the settings I use so you can use them as well if you so please. You can see here. We thought this was wave 2. It ended, look, in this case, ended exactly at the end of the lower boundary of the channel. And look how that coincides with that beautiful bicycle. So now, look, that bicycle produced wonders, right? It was a phenomenal trade setup. Let's see if we could do the same on wave 4. And we could do the same on the subwaves as well, no? So let's do this and connect this. And in this case, no. Again, we have this situation here. Well, here is okay, but if we were considering that this was the low, this would not be acceptable. Okay, so now let's talk about the settings. Notice that I use the 13.85. There's nothing special about it. Seriously, don't ever fall into that illusion that changing the setting of an indicator will give you signals that you will never find otherwise. What I did there is simply make it smoother, because the way I use the stochastic, particularly in cases like in this type of setup, right? Now, notice that what we are doing here is basically, let me make a drawing. Basically, we are transforming that knowledge that we had from yesterday, where we said that impulses were thin, fast, they didn't overlap, they were elegant. And when they're followed by exactly the opposite, you know, when something is followed by something that is choppy, sloppy, overlappy, then we can apply this particular setup and then find out that it has a surprisingly huge winning ratio. You would be impressed if you apply this in the proper way. You would be impressed of how profitable it is. I'm going to show you an example, maybe on a intraday chart. An example that we used a few days ago on a 6-hour chart. Let's see if I find it there. Yeah. No, not there. Oh, because I haven't changed. There it is. Ah, here it is. Perfect. Well, you will see here is kind of clear, right? This was the labels, or these were the labels that I had for this market. I counted this as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And what followed, well, it looked like a 3-way move, up, down, up. So I labeled it as an A, B, and C. And I drew the channel, the corrective channel, And now let's use look how beautiful. When it coincides, gave us the beautiful sell signal there, and you can see what a profitable trade signal that was. Can you do an ending diagonal when it's valid and when it's invalid? Yes, I assume that. I assume that you're asking me for what would invalidate an ending diagonal, and I'll go to that momentarily. For the moment, let's rejoice on this strategy, because it's actually a very, very good strategy. In fact, I'm remembering we used it also in natural gas a few days ago. Here. What time frame did I use? I think I used 4 hours that day, and we had, here we had a wave 1. Let's see if this was where I was. Yes. Okay, so, oh no, it was this one. Okay, not this one. But we probably could apply there. We had a wave 1 here, where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 1. And then we have what I consider an ABC that went down to this level, which I was expecting it to go. And that was precisely where it went. So the channel there gave also the entry signal. Where was the entry signal? Let me see if I remember. Oh, there it is. There it is. Right at the end of wave 2, we got the buy signal, which ended up being a beautiful buy signal. Yeah, and here you can see what I'm expecting now, because I'm labeling it as a 1, 2, and another 1, and I'm expecting a 2 down now. But there you can see it worked in a monthly chart. Let's go back to that monthly chart, because I think we still have something interesting to see in that monthly chart of dollar. It wasn't this one, sorry, it was this one. And we discussed this one, that didn't work. Now let's see if this one works. Because again, we have something very fast, very almost vertical, without overlaps, and it's followed by this mess, right? So you have something clean, clear, distinguished, and then you have a mess thereafter. So let's use the channel and see if the stochastic would give us a signal. And look at that, it won't. So it's already very late, and it probably won't because the way that we label this, we label it as a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's not expected that the correction here has ended yet. Therefore, we won't get that signal. And that's the beauty of this setup. You know, if the setup is not there, it probably won't work. But if the setup is there, really works with surprisingly high efficiency. Really great big winning ratio. Okay, so let's go back to the diagonals to answer to that question. But I believe, just a second, I believe I used in euro. Where was it? Was in this chart? Just give me a moment, because I want to show you. But this is not euro. I want to show you. There it is. Look at that, because I remember that one. Look at this one. This is a beauty, no? Because we had a beautiful impulse wave down. You can even count it with the eyes. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And this beauty without overlaps, this distinguished leg, let's say, without delays, it's very fast, almost vertical, and then it's followed by this messy, choppy, overlappy move that was contained within parallel lines. So now let's add the stochastic, and there we have our cell signal. Not the ideal one, because it still went a little bit above the 80 reference channel, the 80 reference line, but you would have to treat this with care, no? But it worked. It worked nicely, very beautifully. Okay, so I think those are the ones that I remember, at least lately, because these are traits that I took lately using this specific setup without even going through the bother of counting them. Just using the setup. And the setup is as simple as impulse down, beautiful, elegant, fast, without overlaps, followed by something messy, overlappy, choppy and sloppy, and slow, that is contained within parallel lines, and then a stochastic signal. And that gives you beautiful, beautiful traits. Okay, so let's go back to that chart where I could draw. Oh, it wasn't this one. It was this one. Okay, so you want to know about the diagonal. I'm going to that in a moment. In here, you can see that it's going to be very difficult to draw the channel, no? Because if we draw the channel, it's not going to be effective, because when we connect, wave B went too low. So when we connect A to B, it just doesn't work, right? So we couldn't apply there. So yeah, there are moments that you cannot apply it, but you probably could apply it right here. You see, we have an ABC there. So right there, we could apply it. Okay, so the diagonal. So this is the diagonal. So far, I told you that the diagonal typically happened at the end of the trend. In other words, it takes the position of wave 5. And that's why it is called an ending diagonal. So when would a diagonal be wrong? Well, there are several reasons for a diagonal to be wrong, assuming that that's the question you're asking me. One is that wave 2 would go below the end of the origin of wave 1. And why? Well, because the diagonal is also a motive wave, and the rules for motive waves apply. Now, the rules for motive waves are not exactly the same rules for impulses that you've learned. And I don't want to complicate them for you. But basically, I'm going to name the 3 rules for motive waves right now, even though I'm not urging you to learn them, because if you learn the rules of impulses, you will have enough as to move on and trade with the wave principle and analyze with the wave principle without becoming an academic. Okay, but I'm going to mention them anyway. The rules of motive wave is that wave 2 can never travel more than 100% the distance traveled by wave 1, exactly as for impulses. So impulses and motive wave share that rule. The next rule for a motive wave is that wave 3 always has to travel above the, or not above, but beyond the end of wave 1. I said beyond because it could happen that it is a bearish one, right? So wave 3 always must travel beyond the end of wave 1. So in an impulse, because that applies to impulses too, if we have a wave 1 like this, and now we have a wave 3, well, wave 3 can never end here. It always has to travel beyond the end of wave 1. So that's the second rule of motive waves. And the third rule of motive waves is that wave 4 can never travel beyond the end of wave 2. So, as in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If this leg would go below here, that would invalidate the diagonal. So, those are the 3 rules of motive wave. Wave 1 can never travel more than 100% the distance traveled by wave. Wave 2 can never travel more than 100% the distance traveled by wave 1. Wave 3 always travels beyond the end of wave 1. And wave 4 can never travel more than 100% the distance traveled by wave 2. So, those, if you remember them, great, but not really needed in order for you to start your analysis. And in order for me to explain when a diagonal would go wrong, well, I needed to mention them. Otherwise, I would have not mentioned them because that tends to complicate things. Now we're not talking about the 3 rules of impulses. Now we're talking about 3 rules of motives, and then 3 rules of impulses. Now we have 6 rules, so we start complicating things, right? Okay, so I hope this is clear already. Okay, so I think if I continue today, I will mess up with your, with your knowledge already. I will put too much knowledge at once. So I think I prefer to answer a few questions if you have any. Otherwise, if you don't have questions, then I'm going to leave it until tomorrow, where we can continue with more details. And every time we're going to encounter more and more details. If you so wish, we could label a chart so you can see. Well, actually, we saw some charts here already labeled, right? Why don't we go through them and see how that works? Well, we have the case of Etsy, but we already did this together. Okay, we can do something here. Let's do this. We label the big picture, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, how about we label now the smaller picture? So let's take this leg, for instance. Let's take wave 5, and let's go to a weekly chart and see if we can label the subdivisions of that leg. See, oh, it's not showing. Let me go back here and make sure that this shows on the weekly as well. There. Okay, so here we are. So now we are on the weekly, and we can see more details of that wave 5. So that goes from here to here. So we need to find 5 waves there, right? So let's see if we could do that. Well, as I told you earlier, before, I said you need to go with a helicopter view. And you would need to stop. You start down, right? And you need to stop in the first really logical stop. That would be here. So that would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means that we would see there the 5 legs of, well, the first one. That would be like wave 1. Then we have obviously what follows is wave 2. And now we need to see if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 makes sense for wave 3. And here we have an A, B, C for wave 4. And, well, now we have something that overlaps, you see? It goes up, down. It goes up, goes down, but inside it overlaps. You know what type of structure overlaps and still moves in the direction of the trend? A diagonal. So here we have a diagonal where we connect these 2 legs, wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if you recall the rules for the motive waves. Wave 2 never travel beyond the origin of wave 1. Wave 3 always travel beyond the end of wave 1. Wave 4 never travels beyond the end of wave 2. So there we have a diagonal that is functional. Okay, so let's see. Let me review your calls here. Your questions. Are there recommended? Oops, I missed that one. Sorry. Let me go up. Are there a recommended indicator which plots these waves? Never. Don't trust anything, any platform that tells you that waves can be plotted automatically by a computer. There are so many things you need in order, so many things that are discretional in order to label something properly, that a computer will not do it for you. And in 27 years doing this, I have never seen any computer doing it better than a human. So, no. What you could do, and this is a small trick that you could apply, I don't think is recommendable for everybody. And the reason why I don't recommend to everybody is because sometimes it can actually confuse people. But some people will have the problem to see where to stop, because they seem to be afraid of stopping where prices actually stop. But in order to do that, sometimes actually many years ago, I think like 15 years ago, I used to recommend to my students to apply a simple moving average. You go to moving average simple, and you apply that, and you could make it. You could make it a 5 or something like that. A 5, a 6. No, not special magic with that. Let's say 5, and let's make it a little bit bigger so we can see it better. Okay, and then you would see that the moving averages, the 5 moving average will help you because it takes the shape. You see, it stops there, 1, and then comes down 2. And I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, and A, B, C, 4, and now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See how it is there? The moving average does it very beautifully. But you have to do it with a small enough moving average, like in this case, I'm using the 5. Now, sometimes, as I said, this could make it very complex and very complicated for some people. Sometimes I think it makes it very easy, and that's why I have been teaching the wave principle for many, many years. And like 10, 15 years ago, I was still recommending people to do this. I stopped because I encountered too many people having problems with it. But you can see here, down, sideways, down, zigzag. Clean zigzag, like if I were drawing it, right? So you could try, and that would be something that the indicator that I would recommend. But no, indicators are not there to form your opinion of your analysis. That would really that would be equivalent to give up your freedom as a human being for something to think for you or to do something for you, and that something typically is not very effective, because indicators can help you confirm your opinion, but you need to form your opinion based on a proper analysis, and that analysis requires that you basically see prices. You need to see what the price is doing. If the price is doing a structure, as you are using Elliott waves, you can do all that kind of analysis. But if the price is doing, or it's making, or it's taking the shape of the pattern or structure that you recognize, then you can form an opinion. For instance, let's say that you see this and you go like, oh my God, this looks like a zigzag, right? So now you look for an indicator, maybe to help you identify the end of this move. Typically, you would want to count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh well, it's clear there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Sure, the 5 legs are there. So can they follow the rule? Well, yes. Wave 2 didn't travel more than 100% the distance traveled by wave 1. Wave 3 is not the shortest. Wave 4 the end the bright territory of wave 1. So follow the rule. So check. So now, when you have those 5 legs, you may use an indicator to say, okay, can you give me a buy signal, a sell signal, or whatever. In fact, I can show you something interesting here. Let me get rid of this. I hope this moving average thing helps you. But I made an indicator for myself precisely for that type of situation, right? For instance, let's say that I counted here the 5 wave, the down, the 3, and the 5. Where do I go along? Well, the indicator would help me with the timing, but not with the analysis. And so that is a way that you want to use indicators to confirm your opinion, never to form them. Now, yes, the indicator could be phenomenal, because you can see when you catch a trend. This is a trend following indicator. When you catch the trend, well, it keeps you on the trend for quite a while, So it's really, really a good indicator. But by itself doesn't work, because you need to have the foundation, which is the analysis, that requires that you actually know technical analysis and that you actually know about forecasting and where to expect the next move. Okay. Thank you. No, thank you for being here. You have been with me for 3 days. I really appreciate that. Please explain your stochastic settings. I have nothing to explain there. 1385. I could show them to you. There's nothing to explain there. Again, the only reason why I'm using those is because here is the percentage K13, percentage the smoothing 8, and percentage the 5. The only reason why I'm doing that is just to smooth it out. That's all. Nothing really special there. It's not going to give a better signal. So. Okay, wave 4 doesn't end in territory of wave 1. Does that mean that a component of wave 4 can be in the wave 1 territory, but the end is not in wave 1 territory? So question is how to pinpoint an end of wave 4. That is a very smart question, and I congratulate you for asking it. Now that you know let's use this. All the corrective structures, I can give you a very clean example. Let's say that we have wave 1, 2, 3, and now we have a wave 4. But that wave 4 forms a triangle, A, B, C, D, and E. And then we have wave 5. Well, a component of wave 4, as you said, entered the territory of 1. Let's label this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. A component of wave 4 entered into the territory of wave 1, sure. But the end of wave 4 is far from wave 1. So this still works as an impulse, because it did not violate the rule. One part of wave 4 entered temporarily, but it did not end there. Another example. Let's say, I apologize if I'm giving you too much materials, making it confusing, but your questions are very smart, so I need to honor them. 1, 2, 3. Let's say that here we have a type of a flat that goes like this, A, B, C, right? Well, this is a type of flat. It's called a running flat. Don't worry about it. It's a variation of them. So now wave 4 ended here. And from here, wave 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, then A, B, C, 4. That ended above wave 1, and then 5. Again, this qualifies. And unfortunately, you know, we have been doing the ideal thing, and I have been showing you ideal charts. But unfortunately, not all charts in real life look so perfect. In fact, sometimes we're lost. Sometimes I'm lost, right? Sometimes I don't know what it is. And sometimes it shows me that it could be this and it could be that too. So we need to be prepared, and that's why the wave principle gives us or provides us with all these guidelines. There are over 100 guidelines and all these rules. So we can know exactly and objectively when we're right or when we're wrong. Do we have access to your indicator to take trades? Not really. I used to sell it, but I stopped selling the indicator for the reason I just explained precisely. Because people wanted to use it as a buy-sell signal. It doesn't work as a buy-sell signal. It works for somebody who knows how to use it. It works, for instance, I took a trade in natural gas a few days ago and was using the indicator, I call it top indicator. I was using the top indicator, and look at this. Perfect, right? Yeah, perfect, but I was also labeling this. I know that this was a 1, this was a 2, and this was the entry for that wave 3. And here tells us where the wave C is going, and look how perfect it goes, right? But you need to know that that wave C is happening there. Otherwise, you would be buying here. Why would you be buying the wave B? Well, that's what people try to do when they have the indicator. They try to buy wave B, they try to sell wave C whenever it happens, and it doesn't work that way. So to avoid all these misunderstandings, I stopped selling the indicator years ago. Okay, so I think now we can stop here. I thank you very much for being with me, for your presence here, and for your dedication to learn. He said, thank you for the examples that makes the rule clearer. Oh yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for that phenomenal question, which typically is not asked, but often months into the learning process. So you probably have been trying to learn the Elliott wave principle for some months, and now you are seeing with more clarity. All right, thank you so much, guys. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. All right, and tomorrow we're going to go into more details and more charts. Thank you. Bye-bye for now.